I was scrolling through social media when I saw a video from a party. In the middle of the crowd, there she was, my girlfriend, kissing another guy. She told me she was at her friend's place. I said nothing. When she came home, I just told her, "You don't live here anymore." Now she's begging me for another chance, saying she has nowhere to go. So here's the thing about trust. You think you know someone until you really don't. My name's Michael, and I'm just your average guy from Chicago working construction. Nothing fancy, but honest work that pays the bills and then some. I got this little house on the south side that I've been fixing up for the past 3 years. Not much to look at from the outside, but inside it's starting to feel like home, you know? About a year and a half ago, I met Ashley at a friend's barbecue. She was this cute blonde studying marketing at DePaul. Had this laugh that could light up a room. We hit it off right away, and after dating for a few months, she suggested moving in together. Made sense financially, and honestly, I was ready to take that step. She had been staying over most nights anyway, so why not make it official? Now here's where I might have made my first mistake. I never asked her to split the mortgage or utilities 50-50. Call me old-fashioned. But I figured since it was my house and I was making decent money, I'd handle the big expenses. She'd chip in for groceries sometimes, or buy dinner when we ordered takeout. Seemed fair enough at the time. Ashley always told me she wasn't really the party type. When my buddies would invite us out to bars or clubs downtown, she'd usually pass, saying she preferred quiet nights in. We'd order pizza, binge Netflix, maybe have a few beers on the porch. I actually loved those evenings. Felt like we were building something real together, you know? None of that superficial club scene drama. But over the past few months, things started changing. She began staying out later, claiming she had study groups or was helping her friend Claire with some project. At first, I didn't think much of it. College can be demanding, and I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? The late nights became more frequent, though. She'd text me around 9 or 10 saying she was grabbing dinner with classmates, then wouldn't come home until after midnight. Sometimes she wouldn't come home at all, claiming she crashed at Claire's place because it was too late to drive. I started noticing she'd get dressed up for these supposed study sessions. Full makeup, nice clothes, the works. When I joke about it, she'd laugh and say she wanted to look professional for group presentations. I'm not usually the jealous type, but something in my gut started feeling off. She'd guard her phone more carefully, taking it with her to the bathroom or flipping it face down during dinner. Her stories about these study sessions were getting more elaborate, but somehow less detailed at the same time, like she was remembering a script rather than recounting her actual day. Still, I pushed those thoughts away. This was Ashley, the girl who preferred movie nights to club nights, who talked about our future together, who seemed genuinely happy with our quiet life. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I'd been watching too many episodes of those cheating spouse shows during lunch breaks. Things started getting really weird about 3 weeks ago. Ashley's schedule became even more unpredictable, and her excuses were getting more creative by the day. She'd leave the house dressed to the nines, claiming she had a group project meeting at the library. Since when do you need a cocktail dress and heels for studying in the library? When I'd ask about it, she'd get defensive, saying I was being controlling, and that she just wanted to look professional. The red flags were everywhere, if I'm being honest. She started coming home smelling like cigarettes, which was weird because she always claimed smoking was disgusting. Her phone was constantly buzzing with notifications that she'd quickly silence without looking at them in front of me. And the stories about her nights out were getting more elaborate, but somehow less believable at the same time. One night, she came home at 2 a.m. claiming she'd been at the 24-hour diner near campus, helping Claire with her thesis. But when I casually mentioned it to Claire the next week at a party, Claire looked at me like I had 3 heads. Turns out she'd been working on her thesis alone in her apartment all week and hadn't seen Ashley in days. That's when I started paying closer attention. I'm not proud of it, but I began keeping mental notes of her stories, cross-referencing them with little details that didn't add up. She'd say she was at the library until it closed, but the university library closes at 10 p.m. on weekdays. She'd claim she was studying with classmates I'd never met, with names that seemed to change every time she mentioned them. The breaking point was building up slowly, like pressure in a steam kettle. I found myself lying awake at night when she wasn't home, wondering if I was losing my mind or if my gut instincts were trying to tell me something I didn't want to hear. Part of me felt guilty for doubting her. After all, this was the woman I'd been planning a future with, but the doubt was eating at me. I'd catch myself checking her location on Find My Friends, only to see she was at places that didn't match her stories. When I'd bring it up casually, she'd have an explanation ready. Her phone died. She forgot to update her location. The GPS was acting weird. Always something. My buddy Jake at work started noticing I was distracted. During lunch breaks, he'd catch me staring off into space instead of talking about the usual stuff. Sports, weekend plans, complaining about our supervisor. One day he finally asked what was eating at me, and I found myself spilling everything. His advice was simple but hit hard. Either trust her completely or find out the truth. That night, I made a decision. Instead of driving myself crazy with suspicion, I was going to give Ashley one more chance to be honest with me. When she came home from another supposed study session, I sat her down and asked her directly if everything was okay between us. If there was something she needed to tell me, something she was unhappy about. She looked me straight in the eyes and assured me everything was perfect. Said she was just stressed about school and grateful to have such an understanding boyfriend who supported her education. The way she said felt practiced, like she'd rehearsed a response. But I wanted to believe her so badly that I pushed my doubts aside once again. Looking back, that conversation was probably my last real chance to address things before everything exploded. But sometimes you don't want to know the truth, especially when that truth is going to change everything you thought you knew about your life. I was comfortable in my ignorance, even if that comfort was built on quicksand. The next few days felt almost normal. Ashley seemed more attentive, more present. She cooked dinner twice that week, something she hadn't done in months. We watched movies together, talked about plans for the weekend. For a brief moment, I convinced myself that maybe I'd been overreacting, that the stress of work and life had made me paranoid. But that feeling of normalcy was just the calm before the storm. Because what I didn't know was that the truth was about to smack me in the face in the most unexpected way possible. Sometimes life has a way of forcing you to confront reality, whether you're ready for it or not. And my reality check was coming courtesy of social media and pure dumb luck. So the truth has this funny way of finding you when you least expect it. I was just mindlessly scrolling through social media the next morning, drinking my coffee and trying to wake up for another day of work. My buddy Dan is one of those guys who documents every night out like he's some kind of social media influencer. Usually I just skip through his stories, bunch of blurry club videos and drunk selfies that all look the same to me. But this particular morning, something made me actually watch one of his posts. Maybe it was boredom, maybe it was fate, I don't know. Dan had posted this video from some place called Underground, one of those trendy downtown clubs with overpriced everything in music that makes your ears bleed. The camera was panning across a packed dance floor, showing off how wild the night was. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. In the background of Dan's video, there was Ashley, but she wasn't alone, and she definitely wasn't studying. She was wrapped around some guy I'd never seen before in my life, and they were going at it like the world was ending. Full make-out session, hands all over each other, the whole 9 yards. I literally dropped my phone, had to pick it up and rewind the video to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Nope, there she was again. Same dress she'd worn when she left my house the night before, telling me she was going to spend a quiet evening at Claire's place watching movies and probably staying over since it was getting late. My hand was shaking as I texted Dan asking when this video was from. His response came back instantly, last night around 11 p.m. The exact same time Ashley had texted me saying she was already settled in at Claire's for the night and heading to bed early because she was exhausted from classes. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just that she was cheating. It was how effortlessly she'd been lying to my face for who knows how long. All those study groups, all those quiet nights at Claire's place, all those times she'd acted too tired or too busy for the things I wanted to do together. How much of our relationship had been complete fiction? I asked Dan to send me the full video, and he did without asking questions. Watching it again just made everything worse. The way she was laughing, touching this guy, looking completely comfortable and natural with him, like she'd done this 100 times before. Meanwhile, I'd been sitting at home like a chump, probably watching Netflix alone while she was out living her real life. The worst part was remembering how she'd looked when she left the house that evening. She'd spent an hour getting ready, doing her makeup perfectly, wearing the jewelry I bought her for her birthday. When I complimented how nice she looked just to go hang out with Claire, she laughed and said she just felt like putting in some effort for once. I felt like the biggest fool in Chicago. Here I was, paying for everything, treating our relationship like it meant something, while she was using my house as a free hotel between her real social life. The quiet homebody act had been exactly that, an act designed to keep me from asking too many questions while she did whatever she wanted. That morning at work was absolutely brutal. I couldn't focus on anything, kept making stupid mistakes that could have been dangerous on a construction site. My foreman finally pulled me aside and asked if I needed to go home sick. Because I was clearly not all there, I probably should have taken him up on it. All day I kept thinking about how to handle this. Part of me wanted to text her immediately and confront her with evidence. Another part wanted to pretend I'd never seen anything and just live in denial. But the biggest part of me knew that I couldn't let this slide. I deserved better than being played for a fool by someone I was supporting financially and emotionally. By the time I got home that evening, I'd made up my mind. Ashley was going to have to face the music when she walked through that door. I had the video saved on my phone, and I wasn't going to let her talk her way out of this one with another elaborate story about group projects or study sessions. The hours dragged by as I waited for her to come home. Every car that drove down our street made my heart race, thinking it might be her Uber or taxi. I rehearsed what I was going to say a dozen different ways, but nothing felt right. How do you even start that conversation? How do you tell someone you've caught them in the biggest lie of your relationship? All I knew was that the woman who walked through my door tonight was going to be very different from the one who'd left that morning. And honestly, I wasn't sure which version of Ashley was a real one anymore. Around 1 a.m., I heard a car door slam outside. My heart started pounding like I'd just run a marathon. Through the window, I watched Ashley stumble out of a taxi, clearly trying to act more sober than she actually was. She fumbled with her keys at the front door, getting frustrated when they wouldn't work. After a minute of her struggling, I opened the door myself. When she walked in, she put on this whole tired act, stretching and yawning like she'd been studying calculus for 12 hours straight. The performance was almost impressive, if it wasn't so insulting. She looked genuinely surprised to see me sitting on the couch instead of sleeping. I didn't say anything at first, just watched her go through her routine. She kicked off her heels, tossed her purse on the counter, and started talking about how exhausting Claire's thesis project was, and how they'd lost track of time working on citations. The lies rolled off her tongue so smoothly that I almost admired the skill level. But then she made the mistake of asking why I was still awake. That's when I stood up, walked over to her, and told her she needed to pack her stuff because she wouldn't be sleeping here tonight. The confusion on her face looked genuine, like she couldn't process what I was saying. That's when I pulled out my phone and showed her Dan's video. Watching her face change from confusion to recognition to pure terror was like watching someone's entire world collapse in real time. For a split second, she looked like she might faint. Ashley recovered quickly, though, immediately going into damage control mode. She claimed the video was taken out of context, that some random guy had grabbed her, that she'd pushed him away right after. The creativity was impressive, but I wasn't buying any of it. I told her she had 30 minutes to get her essentials and get out. She switched tactics and started getting angry, yelling about how I was being paranoid and controlling. She refused to pack, demanding I explain myself properly. But I was done with explanations. After months of lies and manipulation, seeing that video had flipped a switch in my brain. This conversation was over. After 20 minutes of her screaming and making excuses, I'd had enough. I started gathering her stuff myself, clothes from the bedroom, makeup from the bathroom, shoes scattered around the house. She followed me around trying to stop me, grabbing items from my hands, but I was done with the drama. When I started carrying her things to the door, she finally realized this was actually happening. The victim act disappeared for a moment, and I saw genuine panic in her eyes. She tried blocking the doorway, physically trying to prevent me from putting her stuff outside. That's when I escorted her outside and locked the door behind us. She immediately tried her key, confirming what she'd already discovered earlier. The locks had been changed. The realization that I'd planned this whole confrontation hit her like a brick wall. She hadn't expected me to be that prepared. She started pounding on the door, demanding I let her back in, screaming about how this was her home too. I reminded her that her name wasn't on any paperwork. She'd never paid a mortgage payment, and legally speaking, she was just a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. This sent her into an even bigger rage. The whole neighborhood could hear her yelling about how we were supposed to be partners, how I couldn't just throw her out over a misunderstanding. My neighbor's light started turning on, and I could see Mrs. Peterson from next door peeking through her curtains. She tried every manipulation tactic in the book. First came more tears, big, dramatic sobs about how sorry she was and how the kiss didn't mean anything. Then came threats, warnings that she'd make my life miserable if I didn't let her back in. Finally came bargaining. Promises to cut off contact with other guys and be completely transparent about everything. But I held my ground. Something about seeing that video had given me absolute clarity. This wasn't the woman I thought I'd been building a future with. This was someone who'd been using me as a safety net while living a completely different life behind my back. After about an hour of drama on my front porch, Ashley finally called another taxi. But not before promising that this wasn't over, that I'd regret treating her this way, and that she'd find a way to get back what was rightfully hers. The threats felt empty in the moment, but looking back, I should have taken them more seriously. That night, I barely slept. Part of me felt relieved that the charade was finally over, but another part felt genuinely sad about the end of what I thought was a real relationship. By morning, though, I was emotionally drained, but certain I'd made the right call. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. A week later, I came home from work to find a sheriff's deputy waiting on my doorstep with an envelope. Ashley had filed a lawsuit claiming she had property rights to my house. I literally laughed out loud when I read the paperwork. According to her filing, she contributed significantly to the household expenses and home improvements, making her entitled to a portion of the property value. The audacity was unbelievable. This woman who'd been cheating on me was now trying to take half my house based on buying groceries occasionally and picking out throw pillows. Her lawyer had crafted this narrative where she was a devoted girlfriend who'd sacrificed her own financial stability to help build our home together. I immediately called my cousin Tommy, who's a lawyer specializing in property disputes. After reading through Ashley's filing, he started laughing too. Apparently, these kind of cases pop up more often than you'd think. Scorned partners try and claim property rights they never actually had. Tommy assured me we had a solid defense if I could document my payments. Fortunately, I'm pretty obsessive about keeping records. 3 years of mortgage statements, utility bills, property tax payments, insurance premiums, everything with my name on it and my bank account funding it. Ashley's name appeared on exactly 0 financial documents related to the house. The only thing she'd ever paid for were some decorative items and maybe 20% of our grocery bills. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. Tommy advised me to gather character witnesses and any evidence of Ashley's actual living situation. That's when I realized how little she'd actually contributed to our household. Her clothes took up maybe a quarter of our closet space. She had no mail coming to the address, and she'd never even had a key until she moved in. Meanwhile, Ashley was apparently telling everyone who'd listened that I was an abusive boyfriend who'd thrown her out without warning and was now trying to steal her life savings. Some mutual friends started giving me weird looks at the grocery store, clearly having heard her version of events. The whole situation was becoming a small-town drama nightmare. Court day arrived, and Ashley showed up looking like she was auditioning for a victim role in a Lifetime movie. Conservative outfit, minimal makeup, carrying a folder that supposedly contained evidence of her contributions to the house. Her lawyer painted this picture of a devoted girlfriend who'd given up her independence to support our relationship. But when they started presenting their evidence, things fell apart quickly. Ashley claimed she'd paid for major home improvements, but couldn't produce a single receipt. She said she contributed to mortgage payments, but had no bank records showing transfers to me. Her entire case was built on verbal promises and emotional manipulation. Tommy had prepared me well. We presented 3 years of financial records showing I paid every single housing expense myself. We had the original deed with only my name, mortgage documents, insurance policies, everything clearly establishing sole ownership. When the judge asked Ashley's lawyer for concrete evidence of financial contribution, they basically had nothing. The video from the club was the final nail in the coffin. Tommy argued that Ashley's infidelity demonstrated she'd never been committed to building a life together, making her claims about partnership and shared investment completely fraudulent. The judge seemed convinced that this was an opportunistic lawsuit rather than a legitimate property dispute. Ashley tried one last emotional appeal, cry on the stand about how she'd given up her dreams to support our relationship and how losing the house would leave her homeless. But when the judge asked for specific examples of these sacrifices, she couldn't name anything concrete. Her stories about paying bills and funding improvements crumbled under basic questioning. The ruling was swift and decisive. The judge found no evidence that Ashley had any legal claim to my property and dismissed her case entirely. He even commented that frivolous lawsuits waste court resources and suggested she consider the consequences of filing baseless claims. I walked out of that courtroom feeling vindicated, but also exhausted by the whole ordeal. Outside the courthouse, Ashley's mask finally slipped completely. The victim act disappeared, and I saw the real person underneath. Someone who'd calculated that playing house with me was easier than supporting herself, and who'd gotten genuinely angry when that arrangement fell apart. The entitlement was staggering, but at least now I knew exactly who I'd been living with all those months. As I was walking to my truck after the court victory, I heard someone calling my name. Ashley had followed me out of the courthouse, and when I turned around, she looked completely different from the composed victim she'd been playing inside. Her eyes were red and puffy, her voice was shaking, and for the first time in months, she seemed genuinely vulnerable. She started apologizing, saying she'd been stupid and selfish, that the whole thing with the other guy didn't mean anything. The desperation in her voice was almost painful to hear. She explained that her parents lived in Texas, and she couldn't move back home, that she was barely making it financially as a student, that losing access to my house would basically make her homeless. Then came the plea I'd been half expecting. She asked if we could start over, if I'd give her another chance to prove she could be the girlfriend I deserved. She promised to cut off contact with the other guy, to be completely transparent about where she went and who she was with, to contribute more financially to our household expenses. Standing there listening to her, I felt this weird mix of emotions. Part of me remembered why I'd fallen for her in the first place. She could be charming and sweet when she wanted to be. Another part felt guilty about potentially leaving her in a tough financial situation, especially knowing how expensive it is to live in Chicago on a student budget. But then I thought about all the nights I'd sat at home alone, believing her stories about study groups and girls' nights. I remembered how natural and comfortable she'd looked in that club video, like she belonged in that world way more than she'd ever belonged in mine. Most importantly, I realized that her apology wasn't really about being sorry for hurting me. It was about being sorry she got caught. The fact that she'd immediately tried to steal my house through the legal system showed me exactly who she really was underneath all the sweet talk. Someone who felt entitled to the benefits of our relationship without any of the actual commitment. Someone who thought she could play both sides and come out ahead no matter what happened. So I looked at her for a long moment, taking in this person I'd shared a bed with for over a year, but apparently never really knew. I told her she'd made her choice that night in the club, and now I was making mine. My choice didn't include her, and it wasn't going to change no matter how sorry she claimed to be. Ashley tried to argue, saying I was being cruel and unforgiving, that everyone makes mistakes and deserves second chances. But some mistakes aren't really mistakes. They're choices that reveal who someone truly is when they think nobody's watching. Her mistake wasn't kissing another guy. Her mistake was thinking she could keep playing both sides indefinitely. I walked away without looking back, leaving her standing there in the courthouse parking lot. It wasn't easy, and a relationship never is. even when you know it's the right thing to do. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The constant doubt and second-guessing was finally over. That evening, I went home to my house, legally confirmed, and ordered pizza for one. No more wondering where Ashley was or whether her stories added up. No more walking on eggshells around someone who was living a double life. Just me, my space, and the freedom to rebuild my life with people who actually valued honesty. It's been 6 months now, and I can honestly say I'm happier than I've been in years. Sure, it gets lonely sometimes, but loneliness is better than being with someone who makes you feel like you're going crazy. I've started hanging out with my friends more, picked up some hobbies I'd neglected, and even been on a few dates with women who don't seem to think basic honesty is optional. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if Dan hadn't posted that video, if I'd never seen the truth with my own eyes. Would Ashley have eventually come clean, or would she have kept living her double life indefinitely? I guess I'll never know. And honestly, I don't really want to. What do you think about this whole situation? Have you ever been in a relationship where someone was living a completely different life behind your back? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. If this story resonated with you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means everything and helps me keep sharing these real-life stories. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.